Breaking tonight, another secret vote has just happened, and House Republicans have selected their second new candidate for Speaker of the House. That candidate? House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan of Ohio. This secret ballot sets the stage now for the House-wide vote where 218 members have to agree who is the next Speaker of the House. The struggle for the House to get a new Speaker comes amid calls for a unified Congress to support our ally Israel in its war. And tonight, that war is escalating. Fears the war will broaden, bringing in Lebanon's Hezbollah and Hezbollah's financial support of Iran. Missiles continue to rain down on the Gaza Strip, and the death toll, tragically, is continuing to rise on all sides. The Reuters news service confirming a video journalist was killed by shelling in southern Lebanon. Issam Abdallah was providing a live signal and images from the ground when he was killed. 2 other members of his crew were injured. Reuters is, quote, urgently seeking more information concerning this horrific incident. Right now, journalists from all over the world are traveling to Lebanon amid concerns that the war could also break out between Hezbollah and Israel on Israel's northern border. Hezbollah says its fighters are, quote, fully ready to contribute to the fighting. Meanwhile, Israel is warning more than 1 million people in Gaza to evacuate ahead of the expected Israeli ground invasion. But Hamas terrorists telling the 1 million people to ignore the Israeli warnings. Earlier today in a press conference in Doha, Qatar, Secretary of State Antony Blinken defended Israel's response.
No country can tolerate having a terrorist group come in, slaughter its people in the most unconscionable ways, and live like that. What Israel is doing is not retaliation. What Israel is doing is defending the lives of its people and, as I said, trying to make sure that this cannot happen again. And I think any country faced with what Israel has suffered would likely do the same thing.
Correspondent Chuck Holton joins me from Jerusalem. Chuck?
Yeah, that's right, Greta. If the IDF decides to go into Gaza, which it's virtually certain that they will at this point, they're going to have a serious fight on their hands. They've called up about 300,000 reservists to add to the 150,000 they already had under arms. So 450,000 against Hamas, looking at maybe 25 to 30,000 fighters. But and so it might seem like it's not a fair fight, but the Hamas fighters will have the home team advantage, so to speak, and they have been preparing for this for a long, long time. Now, I can tell you from my own experience with urban warfare, it is the most dangerous, the most difficult type of warfare that there is. They say that it takes about 4 times the amount of ammunition to fight an urban battle as it does any other kind of battle. And that does not even take into account the fact that Hamas has been digging tunnels underneath Gaza for many years. And some say they have up to 300 miles of tunnels in that very small space, about the size of Philadelphia. Now, I've been to other places in Ukraine, for example, in the city of Odessa. There are tunnels like that. And when the Nazis invaded in World War II, there was a small group of insurgents that were able to hold out against the Nazis by living in those tunnels for literally years. And so that's the kind of challenge that the IDF has before it if it's going to go into Gaza and try to put a stop to Hamas.
Chuck, thank you. And obviously, as it goes without saying, be safe, you know, because it's going to get rougher. Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you.
And the State Department announcing that its first organized charter flight out of Israel has landed in Athens, Greece. The State Department says it is also considering departure by sea as an option to evacuate Americans. But with war raging for already 7 days, questions mount asking, why has it taken so long for the United States to act to evacuate its citizens? Plus, who knew what and when? This afternoon, sources telling CNN that the United States intelligence community, quote, produced at least 2 assessments based in part on intelligence provided by Israel, warning the Biden administration of an increased risk in the weeks ahead. That second assessment, citing the earlier assessment that warned that, quote, based on multiple streams of intelligence, Hamas was poised to escalate rocket attacks across the border. An October 5th wire from the CIA warned generally of the increasing possibility of violence by Hamas. Then on October 6th, one day before the attack, U.S. officials circulated some reporting from Israel indicating unusual activity by Hamas, indications that are now clear. An attack was imminent, end of quote. Retired Brigadier General and former U.S. Deputy Military Representative NATO Blaine Holt joins me. Good evening, sir. And when we hear this, all these reports of this intel, these warnings, it sounds horrible. But I suppose, we can't just look at it in a vacuum. Are those the kind of reports that they're getting all the time, so that wasn't sort of exceptional? If they're getting those reports every week, and maybe they are, then those reports are not quite so exceptional and such a horrible blunder and such a terrible tragedy. So any thought on that?
Yeah, I like what you just said there. This is really about complacency. I can tell you from personal experience that at least what you read on the air is a very common thing to read in the book, what we call the book, the daily assessment about what's going on. What we would want to see, and what we don't know, is in the top secret lanes, did they have additional information? What I'm concerned about is one of two things. The intelligence failures that we saw stem from somebody inside the Israeli government or multiple folks engaging in blinding their own government to this, or an outsider like another state and having a cyber capability that we don't know about that blinded Israel to this. But the standard assessments like the kind you just read, I mean, you could just wash, rinse, and repeat those all day, every single day.
And even when I was there in July, there was a military action into the West Bank. So there's a lot of attention was going on in the West Bank with trouble. Then also there was a rocket fired from Syria into the western part of Israel while I was there. And then we went up to the border. There were people that on the other side of this wall separating Israel from Hezbollah throwing rocks over the wall. So I mean, it's not like there's not a lot of activity going on there. And so while these seem like, I mean, these are terribly horrible, that people didn't pick up on this, I just think we have to look at sort of globally what's going on in that country.
That's right. And what we have to do is not get so mired down that we're not looking at what's happening in the north. Is Hezbollah really going to go from probing attacks, which they've been doing for days and days and days, to a full up northern axis of assault into Israel as they start on Gaza? And then what will we do about it? And I think that what we'd love to hear from our government is transparency about what our intentions are, what our strategy is. And that, in effect, could serve as a deterrent for Hezbollah thinking twice about launching an invasion from the north.
But should we be transparent? I mean, let's face it. I think everyone agrees. People are saying that we don't have proof, but I mean, looking historically, Iran has been passing money around to Hamas and Hezbollah for a long time and creating a lot of trouble in that region. And until someone gets rid of the leadership in Iran, and until someone gets rid of the leadership in Hezbollah and Hamas, we're gonna have these other incidents. I mean, that's just a fact, but nobody wants to say it. I mean, it's like,
right,
who wants to say that? Who wants to say that?
So step one is we have to get through the honesty phase. And like you're talking about, Iran's the puppet master. I mean, the administration can be embarrassed about the $6 billion and the additional $50 to $60 billion in looking the other way oil sales money. But what they have to do is recognize, honestly, this is coming out of Tehran. And once you've identified your adversary, then you have to set a strategy to deterring your adversary, and we're not deterrable, defeated. Otherwise, we put Israel into a position where they're looking at an existential crisis, and they've got a tremendous array of weaponry to get at that if they had to. So we have to acknowledge where the problems are coming from, and we have to acknowledge the additional players like China, like Russia, because you can tell from the meetings and the conferences over the summer and in March, they're certainly involved in this.
Well, and there's no incentive for Hamas and Hezbollah in Iran to work something out. And in fact, I've gone through the charter of Hamas, in which they have said that that they want to kill Jews, that there's no peace talk, they will not talk. They've said that in their charter. Then you've got Iran's leadership saying they want to wipe Israel off the maps. I mean, who's going to believe that they want to settle this any other way, other than that this is going to unfortunately be a war, and it's going to broaden.
No, that's exactly right. And I think last Saturday proved that when you look at the absolute barbarism and the brutality that was involved in that. This is a very different day because Hamas used to be worried about their public relations face. They certainly have engendered some sympathy that we still see playing out in the cities. But the acts of barbarism that they took indicate that they're all in as if there was no tomorrow, and that has to come from Tehran, in my opinion, in my view.
See, I think that I'm suspicious that Hamas is going to lure the Israeli military into the Gaza where it's all booby-trapped and there are tunnels and all that. Meanwhile, while all the attention is there with the 300,000 troops that are, in that area, or how many, I don't know how many they're there, is that that's when Hezbollah makes its move. Or even let's look at Syria. Because don't forget that Syria crossed the Obama red line and used chemical gas against its own people. It's not just the artillery. It's not even the nuclear weapons, but there are chemical weapons. There are nerve gas. Well, at least we know that Syria had it because they used it on their own people.
That's exactly right. So when we see this big ground invasion into Gaza, that's what you have to look at: is what is Hezbollah doing? What is Syria doing? The Israelis already hit Aleppo and Damascus airports because of shelling from Syria. So then it would fall to, does Israel have the ability to hit them on two axes? If they don't, does that fall to our forces in the Med? That remains to be seen.
It's really hard as a Westerner to understand the insanity of this. Like, even when we were up at the wall, we were sort of like, a little gallows humor. We were up at the wall, and we were told that the wall is about 15 feet tall, cement. You can't see through it. It's solid. And on the other side, the Hezbollah throws rocks over it. I thought, we were joking, saying things like, "I'm so proud of my son. He spends his day throwing rocks over a wall he can't see." But that was nothing. Nothing.
Right.
But that's how they spend their time. Building up their hate.
Right. And what you have to look at is Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, has ordered UNIFIL, the UN peacekeeping forces and observers, out of that area. And he's ordered the Lebanese military, the sovereign country of Lebanon, out of that area because he's expecting combat operations. And that's what's happening. So I think the entire calculation for the Middle East is about to change in ways that we can't even understand because we're so used to the status quo that you're describing over the last decades. And I just think that what we saw last Saturday has changed everything. And now Israel is going to do something that's going to change the entire calculation yet again.
General Blaine Holt, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.